Hey everyone, how are you doing? This is Dr. Annette here, and I am so excited to be back with you for another session of our book club that we have going on, Heart. And today we're going to start on our second essentially unit. It's focusing on engagement, and we finished up the the H part, which is a focus on happiness. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, you're welcome to go back and look at those discussions that we held. However, if you haven't had a chance to do that, don't let that stop you from starting the E part, the engagement part. Each of the sections that the author wrote are actually, you can actually jump in on any, the risk, the alliance, the thought, any part, and you can go back and do the other parts of the book. So you don't have to do it from cover to cover. You can jump around within that. But I do recommend that you focus on one section and go through that entire section before you do another section. All right, my friends. So we are ready to jump into our learning. I'm going to go ahead and pull our slides up here today. And here's our book, Heart, and we are fully forming your professional life as a teacher, leader, and and the author is Timothy Knoll. Okay, so let's take a look at our first. Let me move the screen over a little bit here. Go to our first page. And we know that Heart has 5 components that the author discusses: happiness, engagement, alliances, risk, and thoughts. As I shared, we already did our happiness. Now we're going to focus on the engagement. And with this entire book, finding happiness through engagement in meaningful alliances while taking focused risks, using intelligent thought and wisdom. Okay, all of that is a part of our heart print, and that's what we've been discussing. So we're going to continue looking at that today. And first, we're going to focus on the engagement. Now, if you haven't had a chance to get your book club and your personal journal guides from our group, make certain that you do get that information. You can also get those in the links that we have set there. And you can print off that journal, and there's some pages there for you to take a look at. You can actually do some of that writing in that, or you can write everything in the book. As I've shared, the author has given us space in the book to write. So as I also want to review, we're focusing on E, the engagement, and all 5 heart elements are essential for deeper connections to our work over the lifetime of our professional careers. And I know you've been following me along, and you know that our professional careers is one aspect of using this book. However, when you look at this book and you read it, and you will definitely resonate how this book and the information in here can have it really spreads to other areas of life, whether it's your family life, your friends, your communities, your church, anything, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be just education. So even if you are a business owner of another type of organization, or a healthcare, or anything, this information is definitely great for all career sectors. Okay, so I encourage you to use it for other areas as well. Okay, but since our focus is on education, that's how we're focusing this. All right, part 2 of Developing Heart, our essential question we're focusing on: are you an inspiring person with the day-to-day energy required to be fully engaged in your work life? That is our big essential question that we're going to look at as we look through these next 7 chapters, and probably 3 sessions that we'll be discussing this. So in this section of engagement, we explore the role that energy and effort play in our pursuit of a fully formed and exceptional professional life. Now, this first part I'm going to do is just as an introduction. And I'm going to read a little bit of this. So if you have your book, I'm on page 53, and feel free to follow along. And if you don't have your book, then make certain that you have that paper and pencil ready to write down some notes. So the author gives us our essential question: are you an inspiring person with the day-to-day energy required to be fully engaged in your work life? And here's a really, really nice quote I wanted to read by John W. Gardner. We cannot dream of a utopia in which all arrangements are ideal and everyone is flawless. Life is tumultuous, an endless losing and regaining of balance, a continuous struggle, never an assured victory. Every important battle is fought and refought. We need to develop a resilient, indomitable morale that enables us to face those realities and still strive for every ounce of energy to prevail. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I am at school, I am lacking energy to get through the day. And what I try and do is to think about, at the end of the day, what I can do to rejuvenate myself. So we're going to focus on that, and how we can do that as educators. I'm going to continue reading on page 54. Now, in part 2, the E is for engagement. We explore the role that energy and effort play in your pursuit of a fully formed and exceptional professional life. I want you to take a look at these questions on the screen here. What are the heartprint actions you can take and the conditions you create if you choose to be fully engaged in your work life every day? I want you to do some self-reflection. If you need to pause this video, then do that and write those responses to these questions in your journal. Will you choose to fight and refight every battle? Right? Is it worth it to do that refight? Will you choose to use and reuse every ounce of energy and effort necessary to positively impact children and adults? And will you choose to become great at managing your energy resources? The big question is, will you choose? Now, the author shares a report done by Gallup in 2014, and the report was an assessment of professionals in their work field, and specifically in the education work field. The Gallup poll finds, and I think I have a slide on this. Let me check next slide. Yes, here we go. The Gallup poll says that disengaged teachers are less likely to bring the energy, insights, and resilience that effective teaching requires to the classroom. They are less likely to build the kind of positive, caring relationships with their students that form the emotional core of the learning process. All right, and I have the citation there for you. So I want you to think, when you're looking at this, you have that full engagement, that effort, that positive energy at work. Those are necessary for that never-ending improvement, right? If one person is doing it, that's great. But if the next person is not, that is not okay. Having that that team mentality is what's going to be important to move that needle forward in your school. Now, you might be thinking, well, what about leaders? We've talked about how this book is great for leaders. I want you to change some words out. Disengaged administrators are less likely to bring the energy, insights, and resilience that effective teaching requires for the school culture. They are less likely to build the kind of positive, caring relationships with their teachers that form the emotional core of that learning process. And again, it is having these words, having that full engagement, whether at the school level, the district level, or the classroom. That full engagement, the effort, that positive energy is what's necessary to move the needle forward and get some really good results. Okay. The author goes on to give some other examples, which I'm not going to go over, but it does give us some thought into what it is that we're going to be focusing on this section with engagement. Okay, my friends. So let's take a look at chapter 8. The title is full engagement, not ahead. And again, I'm going to read this first section for you. Throw yourself into some work you believe in with all of your heart. Live for it, die for it, and you will find happiness that you had thought could never be yours. And that's by Dale Carnegie. When I read that, that causes me to think about the last chapters, or the last section that we read. And, whenever throw yourself into that work that you live for, that you die for, that you do it. It's that passion that you have. So my friends, whenever I'm thinking about that engagement, I'm also thinking about that happiness factor, that passion that I have for the work that I do. Okay. So keep that in mind. And as I said, you don't have to have done the H part first. You can go right in with the E, but all of this will circle around, and it will totally make sense when we get to the end of the book, actually. Okay. All right. So let's go back to our slides. I'm going to read just a little bit here, and I want to discuss this. So the title of this chapter may give away the answer, but take a guess by estimating what you believe is the percentage of teachers actively engaged in their work at school. I want you to think about your school. What is the percentage of teachers that are engaged in the work that you do? Think of all the educators. Think of the teachers, the administrators, the paraprofessionals, the other staff who are a part of your professional work life. Okay, I want you to think, are they engaged in the work that they do? What does that engagement look like? How do you know that they're engaged? Okay, and then the next question is thinking about yourself. How does that make you feel? What does the engagement look like? All right. The author continues to share that where exactly do you go from such information, right? The Gallup polls, of course, that's where the author received some information. You may not know it, but the Gallup polls began in 1935. The reputation of the Gallup polls and surveys over the years continues to bring insight and focus into the professional life of educators. So let's go back to the question. What percentage of U.S. teachers do you think is fully engaged in its daily work? And I want you to look at the screen here. The slide I have has three different areas: the engaged teachers, the not engaged teachers, and the actively disengaged teachers. All right, so these are the Gallup poll creators. They developed their questions that would align to these three different categories, and this is what they found. The engaged teachers are involved with, enthusiastic about, and committed to their work. They know the scope of their jobs and constantly look for new and better ways to achieve outcomes. And in this survey, they found that this 30% of the respondents identified with the engaged teacher. Remember, we're focusing on 100%. So one sector of that is the engaged teacher. Now, the non-engaged teachers, they may be satisfied with their jobs, but they are not emotionally connected to their workplaces and are unlikely to devote much discretionary effort to their work. Doesn't that remind you of somebody who is lacking a full heart? Everything that we talked about in the last section. Discretionary effort, this is defined as it's the hallmark of measuring the teacher profession as meeting your passion and purpose. Like I said, that goes right back to what we've just learned about. Now, unfortunately, 57% of the respondents felt that they were not engaged based upon their questions that they answered. And then the last one is actively disengaged teachers. All right. These teachers are not only unhappy, but also act out their unhappiness in ways that undermine what their coworkers can accomplish. So this is going to be the teacher who is doing the bare minimum and is not a part of a team environment, right? So I want you to stop and think about your grade level. And stop and think about your school. Is everybody on the same page? Is everybody constantly working towards that same goal, right? Excelling student learning and achievement, to building that cohesive community, that classroom culture, that school culture, which we discussed in the last section. Well, my friends, overall, only 31.4% or so of the U.S. teachers fall into the engaged in their work category. And now that was 31%. Now listen to this, matching the national average for all types of workers. So as I shared with you before, what I love about this book is that it not only applies to education, but it also applies to other businesses as well. Whether it's somebody who was working in construction, another person who was working in healthcare, another person who was working in, I'm trying to think of another one, transportation, right? So it doesn't matter. But 31% of the teachers, overall teachers, they identified with being engaged. And unfortunately, that same number, right, really close, is about what it is for other sectors. Now, why is it really important for educators to know this? Well, that's right. We work with children. We work with students. We work with people. And our people are continuing to learn and excel. Now, if we're not engaged for our students, then they're just going to sit there and not do anything, okay? And if you are working in a transportation, maybe in the transportation field, if you're not fully engaged, it's important to know, even though you're working on equipment, however, you want to make certain that equipment works properly. Think about healthcare. If you are not fully engaged in what you are doing in the healthcare field, there could be sacrifices or negative impacts to the people that are served. Okay, so it was disheartening, actually, I felt, to see and hear that 31% of the people in the organization felt that they were engaged. Okay. All right, let's go back to our slides here. All right, so I don't know if these results surprised you, but they definitely surprised me. Okay. The author goes on to talk about a teacher who was fully engaged and a teacher who was not fully engaged and compares them. So I want you to think about a teacher, if you were a student, perhaps one of your teachers, or as a teacher, maybe a colleague, or as a leader, maybe a teacher that you work with, or it could be another principal or someone else in the realm, maybe at the district level. Are they fully engaged? All right. How do you know that they're fully engaged? And that's what we're going to continue to discuss, ways that we can fully engage ourselves at a personal level. And then because of that, that is going to, I can't think of the word, not exemplify, but it's going to expand out into the other parts of your environment. You know, satisfied teachers and leaders, they tend to answer the question, how good do I have to be? And engaged teachers and leaders tend to answer the question, how good can I be? You see the difference? All right, my friends. So, you know what? I forgot to put this bit.ly link on here for you, but I will put it in the comments. But there is a Gallup report about the state of America school, and there's a link between teacher engagement and student activity. And I think I've got this slide here on the next page. Nope, I don't. I'm going to talk about it in the next section of the book here. So I'll circle back to that. So my friends, what I want you to do is look at these questions that we have here, and I want you to be thinking, doing some reflecting. What percentage of your colleagues do you think is actively engaged in its work each day? Can you describe your reasoning? Why? What is your rationale? Why do you feel that? And then how would you define actively engaged? As I shared, we're going to continue learning together in the next several chapters what actively engaged looks like and sounds like, feels like. But I want you to go ahead and get a baseline right now. Write your thoughts down. Another question, take a moment and think about one of your colleagues who you believe is fully engaged in his or her work, and one colleague who is not as engaged, based upon your knowledge of what actively engaged should look like, sound like, okay? How would you describe why he or she is or is not engaged in his or her professional work life, okay? Why is that person not engaged? Why is that person engaged? And then finally, I want you to bring this home. Are you fully engaged? Why or why not? What is blocking you from becoming fully engaged? What would a fully engaged professional life look like, feel like, and sound like? All right, my friends. All right, so that is the end of chapter 8. It's just kind of getting us into the thinking, into the mindset about what fully engaged is. Now we're going to move on to chapter 9, which begins on page 63. And again, I'll start out with reading some of the text, and then we'll talk some more about the information that's in the book. All right, here's the slides. All right, so my friends, you have to want to be engaged. There has to be a deep-seated desire in your heart. Remember that passion we talked about? And mind to participate, to be involved, to make a difference. And that was by Timothy Clark. Now I'm going to read a little bit here on page 63. Have you heard of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act? Right? No? Child Left Behind? Maybe you've heard of ESA, Every Student Succeeds. Right? So these acts were legislated by the government in 1965, then 2001, and the last at 2015. In 2001, the ESEA was reauthorized and renamed as NCLB. It became a very public and political football, right? Mostly due to the issue of required state level assessments. And I remember that so clearly. I started teaching in the public school system in 2000. And so I do remember this transition with the No Child Left Behind. So under, and then actually they renamed it to be the Every Student Succeeds Act, and they reframed it again. All right. And that was in 2015. Now, under ESA, the new one, states now may reduce the role student assessments play in their school ratings and accountability in favor of other factors, such as school climate, teacher engagement, and have the students opportunities to assess work in different ways, and advanced coursework. Now, of all these factors, my friends, teacher engagement, oh my goodness, teacher engagement, and the author would add staff and administrative engagement, right, have the greatest potential to make a significant impact on student learning. Now, I want you to look at the page here on our slide. Teacher engagement, along with staff and administration engagement, it has the greatest potential to make a significant impact on student learning. Now, I'm not for certain if you've heard of, I hope that you have, of John Hattie. He is an educational researcher, and we did talk about him in our last section that we were doing on happiness. But if you look at this, let me show you how to read this. On the left, all right, there are different things that are done in schools. Okay, so at the bottom, if teachers give feedback, if there is some reciprocal teaching, so the teacher does teaching, the student teaches back. If there's teacher clarity, you're very clear on the expectations. And there's just a list of different things. But look at the very top. Teacher estimates of achievement. Okay, so I want you to understand that part. Now look at the very bottom. These are the amount of growth that we call it the size, the effect sizes. So there's a 0, which means no growth, right? 0.5 is growth in the amount of growth you would expect in half of a year. The 1 represents a full year's growth. And then 1.5 is a year and a half worth of growth. And then the 2 would be using one of those categories, you would expect 2 years of growth. So let's take a look at response to intervention, which is kind of in the middle, just above teacher credibility. So responsive to intervention is a 1.07. So if you are implementing an effective program, whether it's in your classroom or school-wide, district-wide, focusing on providing opportunities for students to achieve to achieve at a proficient level. So you're really working with students who are below proficient. You want them to achieve. And if you have solid foundation, you can expect to have a 1 year's growth in that. So 1.07. Okay. However, if you look at the self-reported grades, when you engage students in some self-reflecting upon how they are doing, whether they're meeting the standards, something that I think about is that giving students an opportunity to create a rubric, right? And they are looking at different work and giving this a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4 on a 4-point scale, and why that student would receive a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, why that work gets that. And then the student has an idea of what they need to do to get that 3, that proficient score, or the 4, an advanced score. Okay, so that is that self-reported grades, that students really taking a reflective look at their own learning and what they can do to achieve. So that would be a 1 year plus about another third of a year. Okay, 1.33 or 1 in 3300ths. Now look at the very top. Now remember, our author says the research shows that teacher engagement, and then the author added, along with staff and administration engagement, have the greatest potential to make a significant impact on student learning. Look at that. John Hattie found in his research that what the teacher thinks that student can do, right, is going to have the most impact on that student's achievement. As a matter of fact, it's almost a year and 3/4. It's 1.62. So one full year and 62/100ths, right? 2/3 essentially of another year. That is outstanding. So the power, the influence that you have as the educator in your classroom and student growth is so important. In our last section, we were talking about our passion and what are some things that can get in the way of that, and what is it that we're doing to let our students know that we care for them, that we want to spend time with them, that they can be successful, right? So that teacher expectation is powerful, and we see it again right here in John Hattie's work, as well as getting engaged. So my friends, are we engaged in our work? Are we engaged in our profession? What does this look like? What does it sound like? All right. That's huge. So I know, as for me, I want to make certain that I am engaged. I feel like I'm there 100%, but am I truly engaged in ensuring that my students have the best learning environment that they can have? if I'm working with teachers, am I 100% engaged, ensuring that they have the best quality instruction from me, research that can help move them to be that best teacher, right? That's my mission, is to support educators to be the best blue ribbon teacher that he or she can be. And how do I do that with teachers? I provide some instructional support. I provide some get the teacher to engage in some reflecting. We work on some research. We work on implementing strategies. So there's a whole bunch of different things, but I expect that teacher is going to achieve. The principal can expect that the teachers are going to be doing well, that they're going to be effective. The principal needs to have those high expectations of the teachers as well, and the teachers expect that of the students. Okay? If I'm working with an educator, I expect that educator to excel, and I do everything that I can to support that educator. All right, so let's go back to our slides. All right, my friends, I'm going to, let me look here. I wanted to read a little bit more in the book here. So to help answer the question, what exactly is teacher, administrator, and staff adult engagement at work? What exactly is that? Well, imagine you are being interviewed for a job at Stevenson, which, remember, is where the school is that the author of this book was a principal and teacher and principal for 22 years, he further adds. So how would you answer this question? Describe for me one of the best days that you ever had at work. It is the end of a long day. You are home, and in reflection, you just knew it was that best day. I am listening for your excitement about being authentically engaged in your work. Is there evidence of an emotional commitment that demonstrates how much you care about your work, your students, and your school? Is there evidence you are loyal to the work and to your current school's culture? Hopefully all of this is a flashback to the last section about happiness. Are you excited that your students just got it on that day you described? You know, I have learned over the years that teachers and administrators deeply engaged in the nature of our professional work don't just do it for a paycheck or do it for the next promotion. Instead, we work on behalf of and are willing to engage in the continuous improvement of the school's commitment to an adult and student learning process every single day. Now, when adults in our profession care, they are engaged in their work. They use discretionary effort and seek better solutions. They become more intimate with their work. This leads me to my personal definition for engagement at work. Are you ready? The emotional energy and discretionary effort you give to students, the school, and district, and to their vision for improved student learning. Let me say that one again. Engagement is the emotional energy and discretionary effort, that means anything you have left over, that you give to students, to the school, to the district, and to their vision for improved student learning. Okay? One of the things that I wanted to bring out, the author goes ahead and talks about in his work at a time the school district identified, and many school districts can relate to this, but they identified a time where freshmen going into high school always seem to have a challenge, right? Just making that transition from middle school to high school. And so what they wanted to do was to implement a program that ended up being called the Freshman Mentoring Program. So it's an FMP. And this model that they developed incorporated counselors, it incorporated other students, seniors at the school were trained, as well as other outside people. For example, on this one, actually, Rick DeFore, who has passed away now, and who is an educational researcher, he was one that was a participant in this school because it was something new that they were implementing, and so they were doing the action research along with everything. But what they found was that it was a very, very positive way to help students transition from middle school to high school, and the students were more and more successful, very successful. They actually met with students in small groups of 25 with counselors and the entire team, the students and the other people from the outside. They met with them and they were able to provide the support that they needed and doing their discussions and looking at schedules and checking grades and just being there to provide that support for them. It was so effective that other districts across the nation are also implementing that. So I thought that was wonderful. Now, one of the things I wanted to share with you also is I want to find it. Looking, talked about lasso. I should have put a little mark on it, and I don't see it. Okay. But one of a person, I'll find a name here. But anyways, what he felt as a principal is that whenever he meets anybody, he wants to make certain that he leaves them with the feeling, the sense that they are valuable, they are important, they are just the epitome of teachers or students or whatever it is that is at the area that they're in. Okay. I'll see if I can find that exactly, that person, and I wanted to read it exactly to you. So I want you to think, my friends, think about your heart print. You have your heart print, your passion, your happiness, what makes you happy. You're doing that. How are you letting others know? And then I want you to think about that engagement. Are you emotionally engaged, right? Do you give it your all? Do you leave it all on the field? All right, that's the big question. Do you leave it all out there, right? And then how do you feel about that, right? Are you feeling that you're engaged? Okay, my friends, we're going to continue exploring this over the next several chapters. We're going to look at some some specific behaviors that over the next few weeks and learn about that engagement. All right. I hope that you have a great day. Take some time to go through this, to listen to this video again, do some self-reflecting on yourself about where you are in your season, in your professional career. And I will be back with you again later. So my friends, have a blessed day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.